Hello, welcome. We're back. Elaine Marolakos Edelson here with Astrology Mojo. And we want to help you get your mojo back. So, barring any technical difficulties, my husband's waving at me from the other side of the cafe. We can get through this. Come say hello to me. I'll type that in the chat room. Come say hello. I put hello to me. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. No, this is not the Truman Show. So, thank you for joining me today. If you don't know me and you don't know what I do say is that the planets in the heavens don't do anything to you. We live in a cooperation with the cosmos so that when the planets make a move, you feel it. When you make a move, the planets reflect that by way of aspects and angles in astrology. And we're in a Mercury in retrograde right now, and that ends on March 9th. Add another week for the planet to really make its rotation. And then we won't have another Mercury in retrograde for a few months. We have them about 5 times a year. What we don't have every year, however, is a Venus retrograde. So what I'm getting are some of my notes. So, hey, so far so good on the tech front, right? Anytime any planet goes retrograde, it is known as a shadow period, because any retrograde moves into a place where, remember, the planets aren't doing it to you. And you're facing something inward. Now, when Mercury is retrograde, you're facing your perceptions and the timing of things. When Saturn is retrograde, for instance, you're facing that sense of responsibility or wisdom or denial. When Venus goes retrograde, you're facing several topics, and we're going to get to that creates the 5-pointed star. Oh, look, I downloaded this beautiful image. Isn't that beautiful? And you can see the little loops that it makes. It's when it goes forward in retrograde. That's a 5-pointed star, also known as a pentagram in astrology for Venus. Yes, it is. All right, so what do I want to start with? Well, first of all, we had some tech issues in the last recording, so I want to make sure that I cover all the things I want to cover. Just very quickly, even though we're talking about Venus going retrograde in May, what I want you to understand is that we're talking about this ahead of time, because I'm going to offer something later on, so stick around. And I'm offering this for March and April so that you can get ahead of the curve in this celestial event that takes 8 years to complete. But, it's approximately every 2 years we'll have a Venus retrograde, not several times a year as in Mercury retrograde. And I'm looking for my notes. I'll have to go to the other page. Well, anyway, if you're there, come say hello to me. Oh, here they are. Look, all the Venus and retrograde notes. Woo, baby. Oh my goodness gracious. You see the pentacle it makes in the center? Yes. And when this pentacle hits your chart in certain areas, the topics will include your relationship to finances, to self-worth and your income, but self-worth, self-expression, your relationship to women, and healing. And these 5 points that the Venus makes in your chart is very interesting. It takes approximately 583 days and change for Venus to complete this circle, this 5-pointed star that it makes as it goes around the sun. And when it conjuncts the sun, it makes a very direct point in how you negotiate those topics that we talked about. And hi, is it Brigitte or Bridget? You tell me. Hi there. Welcome. It's been crazy around here. We've been having construction, trying to get cram it in before the retrograde and the pre-phase. Well, not all of it worked, so they got to come back and fix something. Yeah, the shower doors don't stay closed. That was a lot of work. Okay, so come say hi to me. And I have to quickly look up this other thing I was going to talk about. Well, we've also got the Crystal Spirit cards, Colette Baron Reed. I'm going to pull one of those for you later on. And let's see, where do we want to start? Let's talk about, first of all, this particular Mercury in retrograde ends on March 9th, as I said. I just want to cover that again because some of it got cut off in my last event when I was talking about it. And it's, remember, the planets aren't making you do anything, but it is kind of a frustrating time when it comes to technology, or perhaps, and because it's all about perception, and computers are made by people. Telephones are made by people, right? So everything's made by a person who during a particular phase might not be focused. Or there's, think of it as we are carbon-based bodies moving to a crystalline world. And that crystalline energy is part of the matrix, okay, without getting too strange in dialogue. And that matrix makes and forms energy. So that if you have a perception and you believe something to be true, even if it isn't true, it's true for you, it will either narrow your vision or widen your vision. And that stands true for technology. So if you think something will work, it will. But you might say, well, if I think I could fly off a building, I won't. No, well, no, we don't defy the laws of gravity on this earth. We have to take into account the carbon-based biology, the nature of who we are. Then we look at the energetic nature. And so our next Mercury in retrograde will occur in mid-June, just as it's crossing and moving into the same territory as the Venus retrograde. So, excuse me, allergies. So that's going to be a more potent Mercury in retrograde. This one now is about getting lost. Technology, thoughts. Oh, I just put my thing down. Where did it go? Or I had a page open on my computer and I signed up for something and now I can't find it, or I can't get in, or they didn't send me the information. And so a lot of time and energy is taken to rectify something through technology or through your own brain process. This is your technology, right? Where you say, I know I had that piece of paper in my hand. And then, of course, you put it down somewhere and you weren't paying attention because we get lost in a retrograde. So between now and the next Mercury in retrograde, you'll look at your perceptions, right? But in June, we're going to have a double retrograde that is powerful. And this Mercury in retrograde coming up in June, which commingles with the Venus retrograde, is really going to bring up on a core level your perceptions, your relationship to finances, to romance, to self-expression and self-worth and healing. And it shows, and when I do these readings, and let me post a link for you, but when I do these readings, they're going to be very specific to your patterning. And you can start at any point in time, at any year, and say, okay, well, where does Venus show up in my chart? It's going to make that 5-pointed star within an 8-year frame. And when it does, and we can, like when I started doing my research last year, because I am a Taurus, and people who are Taurus, sun, rising, moon, Venus in Taurus, people who are Libra, sun, rising, moon, Venus in Libra, are going to feel this the most. But everybody's going to feel this 5-pointed star. We're going to look at you'll see the stock market is going to make a shift. People's financial futures and the direction, how you invest your money, your defense system. Well, Mars is typically associated with defense, war, machinery. But when Venus goes retrograde, we see the fallout. We'll see, because There's an incursion happening over there, the prices of something in our country drops, or the stock market takes a tumble. So it's very prominent when Venus goes retrograde. So in my notes, I just started at the year 2004, just because. And we had a retrograde then. And I just calculated I actually have 2 pages of Venus in retrograde notes. 2 pages. And I'm very excited about doing these sessions that I'm promoting, and they're only going to be done in March and April. In May, I go on retreat. And I turn 60 in May, and that's my first retreat to celebrate. And then the second retreat is to get into the shadow side and to really fine-tune the program, the Astro Masterclass that I'm working on. I'm going to fine-tune that. I bring a perspective to astrology that I don't hear a lot of in other astrologers. And there are an enormous amount of brilliant astrologers in this world. And as I go into double check myself in May during the Venus retrograde, combined with the Mercury in retrograde in June, I am going to be bringing out esoteric studies. I'm going to incorporate magical things into, magical, not the, wait a minute. Not so much the Harry Potter magic, Wingardium Leviosa, but I'm going to bring out into the Astrology Masterclass, which we will be promoting later on this summer. I'm going to be bringing up how you can utilize that form of belief, prayer, energy work, combination with timing to know what becomes magic. How to incorporate what some people are calling green Wicca, using earth energy. Anything that you experience on this earth is something that you'll be notating as, like I was born into this thing, so this thing happened, or I take after my dad. Well, before you got to this earth, you actually chose some of the things you wanted to work on. And sometimes when we get here, we forget. And when we forget, we make assumptions. Oh, it's never going to work that way. In Polar Express, the one little kid who lives on the other side of the tracks is like, Christmas just doesn't work out for me. It can. Christmas can work out for you, no matter your belief system. And that's where you need to go. Because if you're stuck in something, you believe on some level, and it may not be conscious, you believe on some level that it is not possible, that it does not exist. So when you start to move from, as I circle back to the original topic, when you move from that carbon-based being sense of, well, I can't fly if I jump off a building, and please don't try this at home, folks, because, you'll go splat on the ground. But I can change my mind. And when I change my thinking, I change my biology. And when I change my biology, I open up a whole new matrix of energy and frequency that brings new opportunity to me. Okay? Think on that. Let me just check in. Oh, Bridget. Kate's here. Hi. Jen is here. Hi. Happy to catch you live. I'm live. Unless you're watching this in a replay, then I'm not. But I was live. Elizabeth, hi. My experience with Venus retrogrades has not been so positive. I have experienced losses during those times. I'm sorry to hear that. But again, the losses bring you back to what you perceive, what your experience is, what you project, what, your whole form of thinking. Hey, Catherine's here too. And it's interesting to note, and Catherine, who is also an astrologer, may chime in on this one, but when Venus is retrograde, it's not just about tuning into your feminine self or not getting cosmetic surgery because, you really don't want to get cosmetic surgery when Venus is retrograde. And because the whole energy shift toward the crystalline grid, and a crystalline grid is the higher vibe. We want to call it the number 33. Some people call it the Christ consciousness. Some people call it star seeds. Some people call it divinity. Some people call it cosmic vibe. Okay, so the crystalline grid is your basic makeup. This is who you are. Then you come to this world, and then you're 3D. And you touch and you go, ow, that hurt. And because that hurt, I'm never going to do that again or talk to you again. Or, so you create a perception that creates a defense. And that defense system stops you sometimes. It protects you many times, but it stops you from moving into the world and really experiencing freedom on every level of being. And so the crystalline grid is, I'll say the Matrix and you think of a movie, right? And so if you've seen the Matrix, the movie, and you know that one scene where Neo first goes down the rabbit hole, and he walks through a building, he's plugged in and he walks into a building. He's like having this virtual trip, mind-blowing experience. And he stops and I forget her name, says to him, what did you see? And he said, I saw a black cat. But then it started over and I saw another black cat. And she said, was it the same black cat? And these kinds of questions are the things that start to happen when you raise your frequency. It's, did I dream that and then it came true? Or did it happen and then I dreamed it? Or is it happening simultaneously? Right? Not to get too heady or philosophical about this, but when we have a Venus in retrograde combined with a Mercury in retrograde, kapow, your perceptions are, oh wow, I understand now. It's more than what Rhonda says. It's more than I have losses during Venus retrograde. It's what are the reasons behind the losses? And it can mean, someone passes away, your relationship to a woman goes sour, or things weren't strong to begin with, and you build upon a perception that, oh yeah, we're best friends, or yeah, she's got my back. And then along comes a Venus retrograde, and suddenly this person is accused, and this happened to a client of mine, where in one Venus retrograde, 2 women accused her of things that were out of the blue for her. And they were, I don't want to call them petty. For her, it was a big deal, but it got her attention. It was like some bake sale thing. And it's like, and you use sugar and we told you not to. And, and she was attacked emotionally by these 2 women. And I said to her, let's take away the situation. And it brought up a defense in you, didn't it? And she said, yes. And I said, well, when's the last time you felt this way? And we kept tracing it back to her childhood and a relationship to her mother, and what it wasn't. And then we went further and into the womb before she became this woman of the world and was very powerhouse and, taking charge and leading groups, and how she had this inclination to take on needy women who were defensive in nature. And she described in these women her whole relationship with her mother from the womb. Mom was a victim. Mom didn't know how to. So the moment this woman was born, she took on the role of leader to take over from where mom left off. So it's very individual for every person. In certain Venus retrogrades, you will find that, and if you were born with a Venus in retrograde, like my darling dear husband, there's a powerhouse of reflection on self-worth. And so when Venus goes retrograde and then combined again with the Mercury in retrograde, the perception of self, it's so profound, it's beyond words. Hey, Catherine says, hey, Elaine, looking forward to hearing this. Oh, me too. Sometimes I don't know what's going to come out. Hey, Kate's there. Hi. Good morning from BC. Is that before Common Era? Oh, no, British Columbia. That's what you meant. I'm just going to take a sip because I have a tendency in a Mercury in retrograde in Pisces to just blah, 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 blah. Okay. So let me just post the link. Hey, Gallet's here as well, another Gemini. Let's all look at, oh, wait. Here it is. There it is. Okay. So here's a link to the reading, Venus in retrograde, the 5-pointed star. And it's going to be pretty darn powerful. And readings for March and April. And because I'm going off the grid in May during this particular retrograde, to go to the next level of me, moving more from a carbon base to a crystalline body. And that means physically healing. And that means looking at what it is I want to be showing you, teaching the world, expressing, creating, and getting more into my own finances. So when I do this, I'm going to be bringing out the results in the Astro Masterclass that I will be presenting sometime in the summer. Look for it. It's going to be profound. And videos, audios, time with me, group sessions, etc. And this particular Venus in retrograde that's coming up, it's going to not only bring up what you think you're worth financially, it also has to do with, because again, it's combined with the Mercury in retrograde. And as I say, any retrograde brings up the shadow. And the shadow is just something that's not in the light. It's not evil. It's not dark. It can sabotage you, because if you have a fear that you don't know that exists, or you have an inkling, you get that little nervous feeling before something, and you go, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go. Oh, you don't want to go to the Christmas party? How come? Oh, I just don't feel like it. Like Horse Girl. Anybody watching Horse Girl? Yeah. And so the little things that come up, like, is it me? Am I nuts? What am I afraid of? How come I don't want to go? How come when someone mentions, oh, let's go to this dinner party or, luncheon or whatever, or this women's group, and you suddenly think, no. And your friend says, well, you've been talking about, expanding your business or, making more friends or having more connections. What's the deal? Oh, I don't know. It's not a good time. It's not the right thing. It's too much money. It's, I got to get the kids to soccer, and then all the reasons. The perception is there's something you sense. Now, I'm going to do a right turn, as I like to do in a Mercury retrograde. How does muscle testing work? Anybody know? Muscle testing. Anybody know? Okay, so Power versus Force. It's a really great book. And when muscle testing became a thing and it started to be really, really researched into about 25 years ago, excuse me, a test was done. Facilitators were in the audience. People stood up, and first everyone was cleared to find out, are you allergic to apples? No. Okay, so as long as you weren't allergic to apples, up went the muscle testing arms, oh, okay. They have facilitators. Now, up at the front of the room on stage, they were holding up an apple, and everyone's arm was tested and went weak. Now they held up another apple, and everyone's arm was tested and they stayed strong. Anybody guess why? Anybody? Ferris Bueller? Anybody? Let me just check in. I see, oh my gosh, there's people showing up. I'm so silly. Yes, I am. Better late than never. You're right on time. You are not late. You're exactly here when you need to be. And sorry, some allergies. Okay, the answer is the one apple where everyone's arm went weak in muscle testing, the apple was sprayed with pesticides. Ooh. The other apple where everyone's arm stayed strong, the apple was organic. Okay, so how does a body know? The minds didn't know. Nobody was told ahead of time that these are organic versus pesticide. Dr. David Hawkins did this test. He's deceased now, but he wrote the book Power versus Force. I highly recommend it. And especially during retrogrades, you can gain a lot more information on a cellular level. When you read something spiritual or metaphysical or arcane or in the esoteric arts, you get a reading. It goes deeper. It goes to core because the perception is sidestepped. Your mind's out of the way. The cynicism is out of the way. And you can feel the information if it's true for you or not. And so what happens then when your body knows the truth? When your body knows the truth, what do we say? Yeah, the truth can set you free. And the freedom. Okay, I just pulled a card, and I have never ever heard of this stone. I have to look it up and read it to you. Euclase. You game for Euclase. You see the person's face in there. It's pretty cool. Euclase. Number 23. Is this making sense? Gallet says, driving but listening intently. Pay attention. On the road. All right, Euclase. I've never heard of this stone. And as I said last time, even though we had tech difficulties, I used to buy stones, sell stones, work with stones, all kinds of crystals, meditations, groups. It's in the living room. But my generator crystal, we would do power sessions for the earth and move crystal grids into the world. I've never heard of Euclase. It says wisdom from within. During a retrograde, perfect stone. I mean, you don't have to have the stone. I can go and look I live in a town where there's stones everywhere. I've never seen this stone or heard of this stone, but I'm going to go look for it now. Tuning in to the inner truth and aligning with divine intelligence. When you are distracted by all the noise and stimulation that are part of our lives, it can be hard to trust that you have what it takes to make wise choices. The appearance of Euclase spirit is a sign that valuable insights can be found through tapping into your intuitive intelligence. When it comes to knowing the truth, there is no substitute for live experience that has been recalled and examined. Okay, through the process of alchemy, this is what I'm talking about. You can get beyond confusion and be guided by the conscious universe. You have a vast library of knowledge available to you and wise and loving guidance that will help you. I totally agree with this, and this is why I'm talking about, in advance, giving sessions for the Venus 5-pointed star retrograde combined with the Mercury in retrograde this summer. I'm only doing these readings in March and April so that you can prepare ahead of time for why, as Ronnie says, she experiences loss during every Venus retrograde. Well, let's get behind that. Why is that? And can we turn it around? And the Venus represents, okay, maybe I should have started with this. We don't always lead with the things we're supposed to. But, I take it as it comes. And Venus is the planet that represents love, romance, beauty, feminine energy, defense systems, finances, food, yes, culinary arts, but through healing through those things, healing through food, healing through herbs and tinctures and salves made from things from the earth. And women's issues. Okay, so when Venus goes retrograde, something is stripped away, a defense, a protective system, and it's not a negative or a positive. It can be, once I was hired to do readings at a very posh, high-end, famous spa during a Venus retrograde. They were down an astrologer, and so they hired me. And from it, and it only lasted during the Venus retrograde cycle. And then they didn't want me anymore, and I was fine with that. But it was great for me because I had wanted and needed, my child was going off to college, and I was feeling that empty nest. So I had asked in advance, I'm looking to do work outside the house. I'm looking to meet some people, just get out. And so I got the phone call from a friend who manages part of the spa and said, our gal just left. Do you have some time? And I was like, sure. So I spent a few months doing readings, meeting people from all over the world. I had a great time. And some of those people are still my clients today. It's been 3 years. And that was it. It was not a negative experience. But what it showed me was that in amassing a new form of clientele, what I learned was I love what I do even more, right? This was about my self-expression. And it was about my finances because I earned some money outside the house. Typically it's, through my own venture. And then keeping those certain female relationships and how they have progressed after working with me. And so it was a beautiful experience. Now, in other Venus retrograde experiences, I've had a sudden sense of betrayal from women. Or let's see, which other one? Oh, physical healing, because sometimes the Venus retrograde would land in my 12th house, right on top of my Jupiter, and I would just be having visions, and it was profound. So I look at the dates for the Venus retrograde. Let me show you the 5-pointed star. Isn't that pretty? When Venus moves in toward the sun to make a conjunction, it takes 583 point something days for it to complete its cycle. And so Venus will move in toward the sun, make a conjunction, move into retrograde motion, move back out, move again, and so on and so forth. But in your chart, it lands in the same 5 places, maybe to some degree, depending on the degrees of your cusps, that it may rotate between one house and the next, but pretty much the same 5 topics over and over again. And it takes 8 years to complete that cycle. So we start at one point and then we just move 8 years. And I'm also looking in the readings, I'll be looking at the future of Venus in retrograde for you. So you know what to expect based on the past, based on your perceptions, based on the need for healing in these topics: romance, finances, self-expression, self-worth, healing, and I don't want to say, well, yes, creative expression, absolutely, but how it ties into, the word that keeps coming up is defense, 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 defense. And when Venus is no longer there, or in a protective, Venus is a protective energy in astrology. So wherever Venus is in your chart, you have protection. Wherever Venus goes retrograde in your chart, this is where the illusion is stripped away. Now, I don't want to say you are not protected. I'm just going to say that you are more vulnerable to the truth. And sometimes that hurts because you don't want to see your behavior, or you don't want to acknowledge that, yeah, I formed this relationship out of convenience. Yeah, it's not really, things that don't gel on an intuitive, cellular, spiritual, cosmic level. The crystalline grid is what I'm talking about. They don't last. They just don't last. So, and here's top tip number 1 for the Venus in retrograde coming up in May through June. And that is, and I've experimented with this, with all the things that I talk about, I've either lived or experimented with. And that is, I began a romantic relationship way before I knew my husband in a Venus in retrograde. I watched, and it wasn't even, I picked somebody out and said, yeah, you, come here. Psst. Hey, you want to have some fun? No, I didn't do that. I saw that Venus was going retrograde in an upcoming month. And at that time, I was invited out to a party. And I went on purpose. Typically, I would hide. In the past, it's like, I don't want to meet anybody in a Venus retrograde. And I thought, well, I have to know what the experience is. And so what it brought out was I met someone and I thought this guy would be great for a friend of mine. And so I talked to him and I was like, yeah, come meet my friend. And he's like, no, I want to talk to you. And I was like, really? But she's really great. She's you. And he's like, no, I want to talk to you. And we had a relationship, and it lasted the span of the Venus in retrograde. And during that time, I was profoundly affected by this romantic interlude and what it brought up in me, and how I had been protecting myself on a sexual level from men, triggered by this guy. And toward the end, he had quirks and things, and I would be like, okay, what's your deal? Like, And so I said, yeah, this isn't working for me. This isn't working for me. And I, looked at the calendar, and it was 10 days past. The Venus had gone direct, and I was like, yeah, Had I met this person when Venus was direct, I know I would have overlooked and just said, no, you're not for me. But I needed a healing, and I got my healing. And a lot of times if we enter into a romantic situation in a Venus in retrograde, you'll look at the person and go, oh, best thing since buttered toast. Oh my God, it's so great. And then as soon as Venus goes direct, you're like, what was I thinking? Really? Oh my gosh. Yeah, you ask your friends, like, please tap on my shoulder and let me know that I'm like entering this with my eyes closed. So Catherine says, that's a new one for me too. Sounds perfect for now. Galit, wowza, learned something new, incredible today. Thank you. You're so welcome. Oh, Venus in Taurus. So definitely wonder how this would impact me as well. Well, it will a lot, big time. So you look at your shadow and you look at what happens when you're ready to make a move forward with your romance, with your healing, physical healing, with creative expression and self-worth, with your finances. What happens when you're having the need to move forward? What stops you? That's what we're going to talk about in those sessions. And that's through March and April. March and April. So, yeah. And I'll look exactly where Venus is retrograde and has been. Based on it, we'll have a small conversation first to find out what's been the pattern with these topics, these 5 topics, and where it shows up in your life. And then intuitively, I'll see in your chart where it's going to go next and what we need to talk about. But, whoops, I think I need to cut my bangs. Where we're expecting the healing next. Okay? That, and the 5-pointed star, also known as a pentagram, but that sounds like, witchcraft stuff. So I don't want to use the word witchcraft or pentagram. Nothing wrong with people who are white witches, but Les Dames Blanches, Outlander, anyone? My husband calls me a white witch. So I think it's important too that when you look at the areas of your life that recede, ebb and flow, and you're not making progress and you settle. We're not settling now. We're getting into the divine truth. So says Euclid. I'm going to go look for this stone. Does that make sense, everyone? I want to do the magic die that my kid gave me. How's everybody doing? Sexual healing. Little Marvin Gaye. Yeah, I needed a lot more than Marvin Gaye at the time. And I got it. And I got what I needed. And because of that, I entered into tantric yoga after that experience. And that was profoundly healing. It took me to the next level of being able to transmute energy and to heal my body. We're all individual healers. So when you're ready to heal something, you have the power to transmute energy. You have the power to do this. Click your heels 3 times, Dorothy. Well, being a Christian woman, I can't tell you how I feel. Okay, I'm going to throw these die. And let's see. Focused on today, this healing for you, whether you're watching this live or in a replay, how you could best benefit by these topics. Let's see. What do we have? Whoop. Okay, so what's happening is Saturn. And Saturn's in Capricorn right now. What's happening is structure, wisdom, moving out of denial, claiming your authority, how it feels, Taurus. You might get a little stubborn around it. This is a Venus vibe. You might feel seduced by it. You might feel at home. Like, yeah, I am the authority. Yes, I have been in denial, but now I'm taking back my power. And where does it show up? In your relationships, house 7, in your primary relationships, that can be a spouse. It can be the lack of a spouse and why there isn't one in there, and how you can heal that and take back your authority and claim the position of a partner. It can deal with a business partnership, and or it can deal with the public. If you have high-end clientele, fans, it can deal with possible potential adversaries. So if you need to work out some authority issues with someone who's a competitor perhaps, or someone who maybe you have a spouse who's always taking the reins, or you're always in the lead and you need them to step up. So now it's about getting real. You know, Taurus is grazing in the grass. I used to feel very strongly that Taurus is an earth sign, literally ruled by the earth, guided by the earth, where Libra is more the Venus. Even though Venus takes over both definitions of Taurus and Libra, I really believe that the earth is the planet for Taurus. And being grounded, being very, well, you can get stubborn, right? But let's focus on the pleasure. Movies, music, romance, holding hands, singing songs, chanting, meditating, getting a massage, feeling good about being in your body. Okay, does that make sense? And as we move toward this Venus in retrograde, in the Mercury in retrograde, let's just look at one more. I'm going to do one more card. How's everybody doing? Hi, Carol's here. And Vicky. Oh my gosh. I'm going to be doing some research to bring out more stories of women that I know who have undergone huge transitions with Venus in retrograde. Now, I'll be back on Monday morning at 10 a.m. That's 9 Pacific until the clocks change. Then it'll be 10 for both of us. 10 a.m. Arizona Mountain Time, 11 Central, noon Eastern, and 5 GMT. So we're asking now for all the starseed angels, passed on loved ones, sprites, energies, and divine conscious love to help us beyond planes of existence, karmic experience, time, dimension, and space. And give us a little encouragement for the rest of the week and the weekend. Or if you're listening to this in a replay, for the time that you need to hear it the most. Best advice. Oh, whoopsie. Oh, well, I love this. And I've got them all over my desk. And a ring and a necklace. Emerald. Oh, well, wait a minute. We can't see it because of the green screen. Because it is green. But it's an emerald. It's an emerald. Hang on. Let's see if I can grab mine. Okay. Here's my emerald. And my other emerald, little baby stones. The baby emeralds. Emerald is a Taurus stone. It's an earth stone. It's about protection. It's about wealth from the inside out. It's about your ability to mine the gem in you. Because this stone heals. It is a healing energy. It's a heart energy. It's an abundant energy, not just for wealth and money, but the emerald. Oh, well, let's see what this book has to say. Let's see. Hey, how's everyone doing? Come say hello to me. Opening your heart to friendship and embracing unity. I love that. The message of Emerald Spirit is to open to love in all its array of colors and to become a channel for its healing powers. Isn't that gorgeous? I love that. So take the Taurus stone, the Venus energy of love via the emerald, and move through your days with the sense of compassion and just see that green richness in the earth, in a person, especially people who aren't feeling well, especially people who are a little cranky, especially people who could use a smile. That's all I'm saying. Let's pass that along. And Carol says, Kate says, great. Carol, I'm going through huge transformation myself. Be present, be aware, be kind. Hello, Vicky. All right, folks, I'll be back on Monday, and we'll talk more about the Mercury in retrograde that we're in, and then moving toward the Venus in retrograde combined with the Mercury in retrograde in May and in June, and the powerful healing sessions that I'm offering, the Venus 5-pointed star session. All right, babes, have fun. Whatever you do, be sparkly. Off I go to work on my Astro Masterclass. La la la. You're welcome, Kate. Be well. See you again.